The game of life is a game of choices. To be smart, not stupid, is not simply a matter of intellect, but of spiritual alignment, mental clarity, and intuitive grace. Many imagine that intelligence comes from books, degrees, or clever speech. But true smartness is divine wisdom in action. It is knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. It is choosing peace over pride, purpose over popularity, clarity over chaos. A smart person listens not only with their ears but with their inner guidance. They do not jump to conclusions, nor do they make decisions based on fear, ego, or anxiety. Instead, they tune into that quiet, knowing voice within that always speaks first, softly, but clearly. The smart person trusts this voice. They know that intuition is the wireless connection to the infinite intelligence, and when we are still, it speaks. To be smart is to understand the law, not just the law of man, but the higher laws, the law of attraction, the law of karma, the law of expectancy, the law of non-resistance. The stupid person fights against life. They complain, they doubt, they try to make things happen. The smart person allows. They speak their word and know it is done. They do not beg life for blessings, they claim them. A smart person blesses their enemies and praises their friends. They do not waste energy on gossip, arguments, or proving a point. For they understand that whatever they fight, they energize, and whatever they resist, persists. Instead of reacting, they respond. Instead of judging, they observe. Instead of worrying, they affirm. And oh, how powerful are their words! The smart person knows the tongue is a mighty sword. They do not speak of lack, failure, or sickness. They say, I am guided, I am protected, I am divinely led, even when appearances shout otherwise. They remain unmoved, rooted in truth, anchored in faith. The smart person is not swayed by the chaos of the world, for their kingdom is not of this world. They know that the outer is but a mirror of the inner, and so they clean their inner house daily, sweeping away resentment, dusting off doubt, polishing faith. Their mind becomes a clear channel through which divine ideas flow freely. New doors open, right people appear. Solutions drop like ripe fruit from the invisible tree. To be smart is to align with the rhythm of the universe. To walk by faith, not by sight. To let go quickly, forgive easily, and expect miracles as the natural order of things. The smart person does not strive, they glide. They do not hustle, they magnetize. They are not arrogant, but humble in the power they carry. They know they are not the source, but the vessel. So we must choose. Will we be smart or stupid? Will we fight the current or float downstream with grace? Will we speak fear or declare faith? Will we react with ego or respond with wisdom? Trust your intuition over impulsive reactions. This is not merely a suggestion, but a spiritual commandment for the one who desires to live wisely and walk in alignment with higher truth. Intuition is the language of the soul. It is the voice of infinite intelligence that speaks within every man, woman, and child. It is quiet, calm, and certain, never rushed, never fearful. It arrives not in panic but in peace. It whispers, while the world shouts. It nudges, while the ego pushes. Intuition is always first to speak, but last to be heard, because most people are not listening. To trust your intuition is to rise above the clamor of the outer world. It is to shut the door on panic, fear, and noise and enter the secret chamber of the heart, where the still small voice gives perfect direction. That voice is never wrong. It does not rationalize, it does not argue, it simply knows. And if followed, it will always lead to right action. Divine timing, perfect outcomes. Most people are ruled not by intuition but by impulse. They make decisions based on fear, emotion, or urgency. They feel pressured, pushed, cornered, and they react. They shout when they should be silent. They run when they should wait. They speak when they should listen. The world has glorified speed, but speed without wisdom is destruction. The smart person knows this. They pause. They listen, they ask, what does my spirit say? And they wait for the answer to rise, not from the intellect, not from the emotions, but from the deep well of inner knowing. Impulse is the child of the ego. It is impatient, aggressive, and loud. It loves to jump to conclusions. It seeks drama, control, and instant gratification. It is always in a rush, it hates to wait. Impulse says, do it now, or lose your chance. Intuition says, wait until you're sure. Impulse screams, something is wrong. Intuition calmly says, all is well. One creates chaos, the other creates peace. People often say, I knew I shouldn't have done it. I had a feeling. That feeling was intuition. But they ignored it because it was quiet. They ignored it because it didn't explain itself. Intuition does not provide long arguments or charts or step-by-step logic. It simply gives a sense, a nudge, a knowing, a feeling of either peace or resistance. And if that feeling of resistance is ignored, the price is always paid. The smart person learns to recognize the tone of that voice. They learn the texture of true guidance. They train their spiritual ears to discern between the clatter of emotion and the clarity of intuition. They understand that intuition is not emotion. Emotion is reactive, unstable, and dependent on external conditions. Intuition is steady, objective, and comes from a higher plane. A decision made in high emotion is rarely wise. A decision made in alignment with intuition is always right, even if it doesn't make sense in the moment. The ego wants to be clever, to control, to dominate. Intuition simply wants to guide. The smart person surrenders the need to be clever and chooses to be clear. They do not act out of obligation, guilt, or fear of missing out. They act because something deep within them says, this is the way. And when they hear that voice, they move, not out of panic, but with purpose. Not because of pressure, but because of clarity. This kind of inner listening takes practice. It is a discipline. One must become still, silent, receptive. One must step back from the noise of the world, the opinions of others, the chatter of the mind, and enter the temple of the soul. There, one asks, what is right for me? Not, what do they want me to do? Not, what will look best? Not, what do I feel like doing right now? But, what is divinely right in this moment? To cultivate this listening, the smart person makes time for quiet. They journal, they pray, they meditate. They walk alone in nature. They become familiar with the voice of intuition until it becomes louder than the voices of fear, doubt, or social expectation. They test it, they follow it, they learn to trust it. And as they trust it, their life begins to flow. They find themselves in the right place at the right time, speaking the right words, meeting the right people. Life opens up. Problems dissolve before they even appear. Obstacles vanish. Solutions present themselves before the question is fully formed. And still, the world around them may look at them and say, how did you know? But they smile and say nothing. For intuition cannot be explained to those who do not listen. The smart person does not argue their inner guidance. They do not seek validation for what they know inside. They simply obey. Obedience to intuition is the highest form of intelligence. It is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is the strength of surrender to the higher path. Trusting intuition also requires courage. The path it points to is not always the easiest or most comfortable. It may say, leave that job, when logic says stay. It may say no, when everyone expects you to say yes. It may ask you to walk away, to step up, to risk, to wait. And in these moments, the smart person listens. Not because it is easy, but because it is right. They understand that every act of obedience to the inner voice deepens their connection to it. Each time they follow, the voice becomes clearer, stronger, more immediate. There are times when the impulse feels stronger than the intuition, because fear is loud and stillness is quiet. But even then, intuition waits. It is never gone. It simply steps aside until we are ready to listen again. The smart person forgives themselves for the times they ignored it. They learn from it. They adjust course. They return to the inner compass and say, guide me again. And the compass always responds. The outer world is a mirror of the inner. When we follow our intuition, we send out a signal of trust and clarity to the universe. The universe responds in kind. Doors open without force. Right timing is revealed. The people we need show up. The opportunities we desire align. This is not luck. It is law. Inner clarity produces outer ease. Inner confusion produces outer conflict. Impulse produces detours. Intuition produces alignment. It is not about being perfect, it is about being present. The smart person is not free from doubt. They are free from the need to obey it. They feel the emotion, but do not let it drive. They notice the impulse, but do not follow it blindly. They recognize the fear, but wait for the peace. They listen for the quiet, yes, of the soul, and when they hear it, they move, even if the world tells them they're wrong. In the stillness, they remember who they are, not a victim of circumstance, not a slave to impulse, but a vessel of divine wisdom. They remember that intuition is their birthright, their compass, their sacred inheritance. They remember that they are not alone in this life, that there is a higher mind, a higher order, a divine intelligence that knows the way, and whispers it gently, moment by moment, thought by thought, step by step. Speak words of faith, not fear. Words are not idle, they are seeds. They go forth into the invisible and create form. Every word spoken plants itself in the fertile soil of the subconscious mind and grows after its kind. Words of faith yield blessings, harmony, and success. Words of fear produce delays, struggles, and loss. The smart person understands that their mouth is a creative instrument. What they speak becomes law. What they declare becomes their experience. Most people speak carelessly, unaware that they are issuing decrees with every sentence. They say things like, "I'm always broke. I can't catch a break. This always happens to me," and then wonder why misfortune seems to follow them. These are not harmless expressions, they are self-fulfilling prophecies. Words of fear bind, limit, and delay. They call forth the very conditions one seeks to avoid. Fearful speech is magnetic to negative experiences. The smart person chooses their words with reverence, for they know that the universe listens and responds. To speak words of faith is not to ignore appearances, but to rise above them. It is to look a problem in the eye and say, "Even this shall pass. Even this shall be made right. I am divinely guided, and nothing can harm me." Faith speaks in the language of certainty, not desperation. It does not beg, it declares. It does not hope, it knows. Faith says, "I am provided for." Even when the bank account is low, it says, "I am healed." Even when the diagnosis is grim, it says, "Everything is unfolding perfectly." Even when circumstances appear chaotic. Fearful people believe that their words must reflect their situation. They think it dishonest to say, "I am well," when they are sick, or "I am wealthy," when they are in debt. But spiritual law does not operate by the visible. It responds to the spoken word backed by belief. The smart person understands this paradox. They know that speaking the truth of the soul is more powerful than describing the facts of the moment. They declare what they desire to see, not what they currently observe. Speaking words of faith requires discipline. The world trains people to complain, to doubt, to gossip, to dramatize. But the one who desires mastery over life must gain mastery over the tongue. The uncontrolled tongue is like a wild horse. It can destroy. The trained tongue is a golden chariot, carrying the speaker swiftly toward their good. The smart person speaks deliberately. They ask themselves before speaking, "Is this rooted in faith or in fear?" If the answer is fear, they are silent. If it is faith, they speak it boldly. Many wonder why their affirmations seem ineffective. They say, "I repeated the positive words, but nothing changed." This is because the words were empty. Faith is not in the syllables, it is in the vibration behind the words. To say, "I am prosperous," while feeling fear and doubt is to cancel the affirmation before it has time to take root. The smart person does not merely recite, they embody. They fill their words with conviction. They speak from the place of knowing, not wishing. To cultivate this kind of speech, one must first cleanse the heart. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. If the heart is filled with resentment, worry, and guilt, then even the most beautiful words will carry the frequency of fear. The smart person examines their inner state. They release what is false. They forgive past wrongs. They neutralize bitterness with blessing. Then, when they speak, their words are pure vessels of light and power. Faith-filled speech is not just for moments of crisis. It is a way of life. It is saying, "Thank you," Before the blessing arrives, it is saying, I am safe. Before the path is clear, it is saying yes to life, even when circumstances seem to say no. The smart person builds a habit of faith, language in small things, so that when the storm comes, their tongue does not default to fear. They speak life into their home, their work, their body, their relationships. They speak hope when others complain. They speak solutions when others speak problems. Their words uplift, direct, and bless. Words of faith also carry authority. They are not passive. They command. The smart person speaks with the certainty of one who knows they are backed by divine power. They say, doors open for me now. And the doors swing wide. They say, the right people are drawn to me. And the people appear. They say, nothing and no one can stop my good, and obstacles dissolve. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is standing in the truth of who one really is, a creator, not a victim. Fearful words, on the other hand, weaken the speaker. They broadcast doubt, confusion, and vulnerability. They attract unwanted situations. The person who constantly says, I can't, I'm afraid, what if it goes wrong, is sowing seeds of struggle. These seeds may not sprout immediately, but they will take root. The smarty person refuses to plant what they do not want to harvest. They weed the garden of their speech daily. If a fear-based thought arises, they do not speak it. They transform it. They say, I release this thought. I choose to speak only what I desire to see. This practice does not mean denying emotions. Emotions arise, and the smart person feels them fully, but they do not speak them into permanence. They may feel afraid, but they do not say, I am doomed. Instead, they say, even now, I am being guided. They do not speak limitation into their life story. They do not make declarations rooted in temporary discomfort. They speak from the higher self, the eternal truth, the part of them that is untouched by circumstance. Children instinctively understand this. They speak with boldness. They say, I'm a superhero. I'm the fastest. I'm amazing, without apology or doubt. Somewhere along the way, the world teaches people to speak smaller, to temper their light, to hedge their declarations. The smart person reclaims that childlike certainty. They remember the creative power of the word. They say, I am worthy. I am whole. I am ready. And they say it not as a wish but as a decree. This way of speaking also influences others. Words of faith uplift not only the speaker but the listener. In a room full of fear, one voice of truth can shift the energy. The smart person uses their words to build, to bless, to calm, to guide. They do not waste their breath on gossip or criticism. They use their words as instruments of healing. They speak favor over others. They say, you've got this. You're not alone. Something good is coming. And those words take root in the hearts of those who hear them. Their speech becomes a ministry. It is said that words are spells. That is why we spell them. Each sentence is a casting of intent into the fabric of reality. The smart person treats this power with reverence. They know that a careless word can wound deeply, and a kind word can heal. They do not say what they do not mean. They do not predict doom or speak defeat. They speak as one whose words are watched, for they know they are always planting, always directing energy, always creating. Align with universal laws, not ego. The universe is governed by fixed principles, invisible yet unchanging, eternal yet immediate. These laws are not invented by humankind. They are discovered. They existed before language, before belief, before any religion. Just as gravity pulls with silent certainty, the spiritual laws work in stillness and precision. They do not bend to opinion, emotion, or circumstance. The smart person learns to recognize and live by these laws, for they are the blueprint of a harmonious life. The ego, on the other hand, is loud, reactive, and unstable. It thrives on control, separation, comparison, and fear. It believes that life must be forced, manipulated, and defended. It does not trust flow. It believes in fight. The ego resists the universal order because it wants to be the sole ruler. It wants to claim credit for every success and assign blame for every failure. It is addicted to appearances and obsessed with outcomes. The smart person sees through this illusion and aligns instead with what is real, what is true, and what is permanent. There is a law of cause and effect. What you sow, you reap. Every thought, word, and action plants a seed in the unseen, and that seed will return a harvest in due season. The ego believes it can cheat this law, cut corners, or manipulate outcomes. It thinks it can lie without consequence, hate without return, take without loss. But the law is impersonal and unyielding. It delivers not what one wants, but what one gives. The smart person knows this and chooses their inner world carefully. They guard their thoughts. They bless rather than curse. They forgive rather than avenge. They trust that every generous act returns multiplied, every fearful impulse must be dissolved, and nothing escapes the balance of divine law. There is the law of vibration. Everything is energy and everything vibrates. Thoughts are not invisible, they are magnetic. Feelings are not private, they radiate. The ego clings to the idea that thoughts are neutral unless acted upon, but the universal law responds to the frequency behind every intention. What you expect, you invite. What you believe, you build. What you fear, you feed. The smart person raises their vibration deliberately. They choose thoughts that reflect the world they wish to live in, not the one they fear. They speak not of what is lacking, but of what is already on its way. They do not wait for conditions to improve. They improve their own alignment first. Knowing the outer must follow the inner. The law of divine timing is another that the ego resents. The ego demands instant gratification. It wants results now, applause now, answers now. It views waiting as weakness. But the smart person trusts the perfect unfolding of events. They understand that what is truly theirs can never be withheld, and what delays them may be refining them. They do not rush, force, or panic. They take inspired action and then release the outcome, knowing that right timing is never late. They align with patience, not passivity. They move when moved by spirit, not pushed by fear. Another great law is the law of assumption. What you assume to be true becomes your reality. The ego doubts, questions, and sabotages. It assumes danger, rejection, and failure. It replays past disappointments and projects them onto the future. The smart person chooses differently. They assume success, they assume favor, they assume ease. Not as fantasy, but as alignment with what is possible through higher law. They walk as if their good is already theirs. They speak as if doors have already opened. They live from the end, not toward it. This alignment collapses delays and draws outcomes swiftly, for belief is the fuel of manifestation. The ego thrives on resistance. It believes that struggle is noble, that effort proves worth, that pain is the price of progress. But universal law works through ease. Nature does not strain to bloom, nor does the sun force itself to shine. The smart person lets go of the ego's attachment to struggle. They do not glorify burnout, competition, or overwork. They align with the law of flow, which says that what is right for you comes without strain. When resistance arises, they do not push harder. They pause, listen, and redirect. They move with life, not against it. There is also the law of oneness. All is connected. What you do to another, you do to yourself. The ego lives in separation. It sees others as competitors, threats, or tools. It creates hierarchies, judgments, and divisions. It seeks superiority through exclusion. But the universal law reveals unity. The smart person sees others not as enemies or rivals, but as reflections of their own consciousness. They bless those who curse them. They celebrate the success of others as proof of what is possible. They do not tear others down to feel taller. They rise by lifting others. They align with the truth that what is sent out returns, and so they send only what they wish to receive. The ego craves control. It clings to plans, predictions, and preferences. It fears the unknown and tries to dominate the unfolding of events. But the universal laws require surrender. Surrender is not defeat, it is alignment. The smart person lets go of needing to know every detail. They release the how and trust the law to handle the logistics. They hold the vision but let the path unfold. They move with inspired clarity but not rigid attachment. They replace control with cooperation, planning with presence. The ego also loves complexity. It confuses, distracts, and overcomplicates. It believes that success must be difficult and answers must be hidden. But universal truth is simple. What you give, returns. What you believe manifests. What you align with, becomes your experience. The smart person avoids overthinking and analysis paralysis. They do not seek endless proof or validation. They trust the simplicity of divine order. They clear their inner space and allow clarity to emerge. Gratitude is another force aligned with universal law. It multiplies good and dissolves limitation. The ego sees only what is missing. It compares, complains, and craves. But gratitude sees what is already working. It amplifies blessings by acknowledging them. The smart person gives thanks before the evidence appears. They cultivate appreciation not just as a feeling, but as a frequency. Gratitude is not passive, it is magnetic. It draws more to be grateful for. It signals to the law that the individual is ready to receive more. The law of detachment is often misunderstood. The ego thinks detachment means not caring, but in truth it means not clinging. The smart person desires fully, but without desperation. They hold their dreams like a bird in an open palm, not clenched in a fist. They trust the law to deliver in the best way, even if it looks different than they imagined. They do not measure success by appearances. They measure alignment. They know that the ego will always want more, but the soul desires truth. Humility is also essential to alignment. The ego seeks praise and superiority. It wants to be right, to be admired, to be worshipped. But universal law favors the humble, not the timid, but the clear. The smart person does not need to prove themselves. They serve quietly, they give generously. They remain teachable. They do not believe they are above others, nor do they pretend to be beneath them. They simply are, and they allow others to be. There is a rhythm to everything, a divine intelligence that orders the stars, the tides, the breath. The smart person aligns with that rhythm. They do not rush ahead, nor do they lag behind. They feel when to move, when to wait, when to act, when to release. They trust that this intelligence is greater than their limited view. They know that the ego panics in uncertainty, but the soul rests in knowing. The more they release the need to control, the more miracles unfold without effort. They stop striving and start aligning. They stop demanding and start receiving. They understand that the ego resists what already belongs to them, while alignment allows it in. Protect your energy like treasure. Your energy is your currency, your vibration, your influence, your shield, your magnet. It determines what you attract, how you feel, what you notice, and how others respond to you. To the smart person, energy is not abstract, it is practical. It is the very fuel of their clarity, their peace, their intuition, their creativity. When it is scattered, polluted, or drained, they cannot think clearly, love deeply, or move wisely. So, they guard it, not out of fear but out of wisdom. They treat it like sacred gold, because that is exactly what it is. People trade their energy for approval, for likes, for petty arguments, for the illusion of control, for proving their worth. They exhaust themselves pleasing people who are not pleased by anything. They drain themselves responding to every comment, every conflict, every demand that comes their way. The smart person no longer lives this way. They recognize what steals their peace. They step back from emotional clutter, from energetic vampires, from mental noise. They stop giving access to those who only take. Stop explaining themselves to those committed to misunderstanding, and stop leaking energy into holes that never fill. Protecting your energy means becoming deeply selective about your focus. Where your attention goes, energy flows. If your attention is constantly pulled to chaos, gossip, negativity, and lack, your energy will reflect that. You will feel tired, irritated, restless, and empty. The smart person redirects their gaze. They look toward growth, beauty, peace, and purpose. They do not stare at the problem for hours. They seek solutions. They do not obsess over what is missing, they appreciate what is present. They do not feed the noise, they nourish the stillness. Their attention is not free, it is invested with intention. Energy protection also means understanding boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors with locks. The smart person decides who walks through those doors. They do not allow anyone to enter their field with disrespect, manipulation, or drama. They do not keep people around out of guilt or fear. They do not allow their kindness to be mistaken for endless access. They say no, not with hardness but with honor. They say no to conversations that drain, commitments that distract, relationships that deplete. Every no to what dishonors them is a yes to their power. Some protect their homes more than their minds. They lock the doors but leave their inner space wide open to every fear, every demand, every insult. The smart person locks the mind as firmly as the house. They become conscious of what thoughts they entertain. They do not invite every worry to sit and stay. They do not replay old arguments like background music. They keep their mental space clean, calm, and aligned. If a negative thought knocks, they answer with truth. If an anxious thought arises, they soothe it. Not with panic, but with presence. Their energy is not left to chance. It is curated. Technology is one of the greatest drains of modern energy. Endless scrolling, passive consumption, digital noise, it all fragments the focus and saps vitality. The smart person limits their exposure. They choose when to be online, what to consume, and why. They do not wake up to notifications and feed their mind chaos before the day even begins. They reclaim their mornings, protect their sleep, and create digital boundaries. They understand that quiet is not empty, it is powerful. In stillness, energy is restored, clarity returns, and guidance flows. Relationships either nourish or drain, uplift or confuse. The smart person audits their circle without apology. They do not tolerate emotional games, passive aggression, or energetic dependence. They do not confuse history with alignment. They love deeply, but they love themselves enough to walk away when necessary. They do not chase connection. They attract it through resonance. They surround themselves with those who respect their time, honor their growth, and match their energy. They know that one true connection is worth more than 100 shallow ones. They keep their circle sacred, not crowded. The body is the vessel of energy. To protect energy is to care for the body. The smart person listens to their physical cues. They rest when tired, move when stagnant, hydrate when dry, nourish when depleted. They do not push themselves beyond balance in the name of achievement. They do not punish their body with guilt or shame. They create rituals of renewal, walks in nature, baths of silence, meals of gratitude, moments of movement. They honor their body as an altar, a channel for intuition and joy. Their energy is grounded, not scattered. Silence is a sanctuary for energy. The world is loud and the ego thrives in noise. The smart person creates intentional silence. They step away from the crowd, the constant, the chaotic. In silence, they hear their own voice again. In silence, the wisdom within rises. In silence, the energy they gave away returns home. They do not fear being alone, they cherish it. Solitude is not loneliness, it is presence with self. It is a sacred meeting with spirit. The smart person turns down the outer volume to hear the inner knowing. Energy is also affected by what is unspoken. Unexpressed anger, unhealed wounds, unresolved grief, these are silent drains. The smart person does not bury their emotions. They acknowledge, feel, and release. They write it out, cry it through, speak it safely. They do not carry the weight of unprocessed pain into tomorrow. They do not perform wellness while suppressing truth. Emotional honesty is energy hygiene. They know that what is felt can be healed. What is denied grows heavier. They lighten their load by living emotionally clean. Words carry energy. Every word spoken either lifts or lowers vibration. The smart person speaks with care. They do not curse their lives with complaint, do not drain their field with gossip, do not weaken themselves with sarcasm and self-deprecation. They bless their path with kind language. They affirm their worth, their strength, their direction. They speak light into their space, speak healing into their days. Their words match their energy, and their energy shapes their experience. Many give their energy to the past. Regrets, grudges, memories loop endlessly. But the past is a closed door. The smart person withdraws their energy from what cannot be changed. They bless the past, release the attachment, and bring their full power to the now. Energy in the present multiplies. Energy trapped in memory withers. They reclaim the power once lost in old stories and invest it in new creation. Comparison is another thief of energy. The ego thrives on measuring itself against others. But the smart person knows that comparison is a lie. No one has your path, your purpose, your timing. They do not spend energy watching someone else's garden bloom. They water their own. They celebrate others without diminishing themselves. They understand that someone else's success is not their failure. They are too focused on their alignment to be distracted by envy. Energy is also protected through spiritual connection. Whether through prayer, meditation, visualization, or silence, the smart person returns daily to the source. They recharge in the invisible. They draw strength not just from food or rest, but from truth. They speak with their higher self. They receive clarity from the field of the unseen. They know that energy is not just physical, it is soul deep. And when the soul is nourished, the energy glows. Living wisely means spending energy on what feeds, not what bleeds. The smart person asks, does this lift me? Does this align with my truth? Does this reflect love or fear? They do not react, they respond. They do not explain, they embody. They do not chase, they attract. Their energy is not random, it is sovereign. They live like guardians of a sacred flame, and that flame lights the way forward. Think long, not loud. The smart person does not rush to speak just to be heard. They do not confuse volume with value, reaction with wisdom, or speed with substance. They understand that the loudest voice is often not the wisest, and that many speak only to fill the silence, not to reveal truth. In a world obsessed with immediate opinions, instant reactions, and attention-grabbing declarations, the smart person chooses instead to think deeply, speak thoughtfully, and act intentionally. They know that real power is quiet, real clarity is calm, and real intelligence waits for understanding before it demands attention. Thinking long means pausing between stimulus and response. It means allowing space for reflection, for discernment, for observation. The ego rushes. It feels threatened by silence and impatient with process. It wants to be first, not right. But the smart person recognizes the strength of stillness. They know that wisdom does not shout. It listens. It gathers. It weighs. It reflects. It does not race to conclusion but walks to insight. The smart person is not interested in winning arguments. They are interested in seeing clearly. They do not throw words like darts. They shape them like keys. To think long is to see beyond the moment. It means stepping back from the heat of emotion and looking through the eyes of time. The loud thinker reacts to what is immediate. They are consumed by the now, triggered by every shift, pulled into every storm. The long thinker sees the bigger picture. They ask, will this matter in 5 years? Is this the real issue, or just the symptom? Am I responding from wisdom or wound? They do not allow fleeting moods to drive permanent decisions. They rise above the noise of urgency to listen to the whisper of vision. Thinking long also means caring more about truth than ego. The ego wants to be right, not wise. It speaks over others, defends its position, clings to its story. But the smart person is willing to change their mind. They do not fear being wrong. They fear remaining blind. They study themselves as much as they study others. They ask hard questions and do not flinch at the answers. They recognize that growth often comes through discomfort, and that the truth may contradict what they once believed. They are not loyal to their opinions. They are loyal to their evolution. Loud thinkers often seek to impress. They want to appear certain, strong, informed, important. They speak more than they listen. They fill space with words instead of wisdom. But the smart person does not perform intelligence. They embody it. They are not interested in being impressive. They are interested in being effective. They know that true influence does not come from noise, but from clarity. Their thoughts are not rushed, and their words are not wasted. They would rather say one thing that transforms than 10 things that distract. They carry presence more than persuasion. To think long is to think beyond self. It means considering the impact of your words and actions, not just on your own life, but on the lives around you. The smart person asks, what does this decision ripple into? Who does this choice affect? Is this beneficial or just convenient? They understand that leadership begins with responsibility, that the mind must be trained not only to analyze, but to empathize. They do not think only for their own gain. They think for the good of the whole. They are not caught in the vanity of personal victories, but are committed to collective wisdom. The practice of thinking long sharpens the inner voice. When the world shouts with noise, urgency, and distraction, the smart person turns inward. They make space for their own insight to emerge. Not recycled thoughts, not borrowed beliefs, but original, conscious perspective. They journal. They meditate. They walk. They sit with questions instead of demanding immediate answers. They know that deep thinking is not about complication. It is about clarity. The deeper the roots, the higher the reach. They allow time for thoughts to mature, for intuition to rise, for alignment to crystallize. They do not confuse mental noise with mental strength. Thinking long means thinking ahead. It means planting seeds, not just picking fruit. The smart person sees decisions as seeds. They understand that what they do now shapes what grows later. They do not act for applause. They act for results. They are not driven by how things look, but by how they unfold. They prepare for seasons not yet here. They make choices their future self will thank them for. While others chase quick wins, they invest in deep foundations. They know that some rewards come only to those willing to wait, build, and endure. They do not fear the long road. They walk it with quiet confidence. There is also discipline in thinking long. Discipline to resist impulsive reactions, to pause before speaking, to question before concluding. The smart person does not let mood drive meaning. They do not let urgency dictate truth. They take responsibility for their perceptions. They recognize that not everything deserves a response, and not every reaction deserves energy. They develop the strength to observe without absorbing, to witness without collapsing, to engage without losing their center. Their mind is not chaotic, it is trained, not rigid but refined. Thinking long invites grace. Grace for others, grace for self, grace for the process. The smart person does not demand perfection, only progress. They know that understanding takes time, and that growth is not always loud or visible. They do not rush others into change nor shame themselves for evolving slowly. They honor the timing of insight, the layers of healing, the unfolding of clarity. They do not interrupt the process with premature certainty. They let things ripen. They let wisdom arrive in its own way, in its own time. The world often rewards the loudest voice, but the smart person is not chasing applause. They are pursuing alignment. They speak only when their words carry weight. They act only when their steps are guided by insight. They trust that silence can be louder than noise, that presence can speak louder than opinion, and that understanding grows not from speaking first, but from listening fully. In conversations, the smart person does not dominate. They create space. They ask questions, they listen with curiosity, they pause before responding. They are not waiting to talk. They are learning, absorbing, reflecting. They do not argue for the sake of being right. They explore for the sake of uncovering truth. They do not speak to fill silence. They speak to bridge understanding. Their communication is rooted not in the need to impress, but in the desire to connect. They are aware of the energy behind their thoughts. Loud thinking is often anxious, defensive, or self-absorbed. Long thinking is calm, centered, and spacious. The smart person clears the emotional fog before they try to make sense of anything. They ask, is this thought coming from fear or clarity? Is this belief rooted in truth or habit? They challenge their assumptions. They are not seduced by their own biases. They grow beyond them. They understand that every belief is a lens, and if the lens is dirty, the vision will be distorted. They think long because they live long. Not in years, but in depth. They are not reacting to today, they are shaping the whole story. They are not chasing the next thing. They are building something enduring. They make decisions not just for now, but for legacy. They do not seek to be impressive today, they seek to be impactful over time. Their mind is not loud, but luminous, quiet, aware, deliberate, and deeply, deeply alive.